we explain bands. I'm Olivia Ladd, a music journalist in Nashville, and in this podcast, I pick a band with a cult following, find a friend or an artist from the Nashville music scene, and we sit down and go through the chronological history, share fun facts, and delve into the influence and impact the band has had on today's music. Bandsplainer is part of the We Own This Town network of podcasts based here in Nashville. You can find more information and new episodes on weownthistown.net, bandsplainer.show, or Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you get your favorite podcast. We hope you enjoy this episode, and be sure to subscribe or follow Bandsplainer on Twitter to keep up with the latest. Thanks for listening. So welcome to Bandsplainer, the podcast where we explain bands. Today we're going to explain the Avett brothers, and we have two guests on the show today. So we have Luke Adamson and Collin Fidler, and you guys can go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about what you do around town.
Cool. Okay, I'm Collin. I work at Oh Boy Records, home of John Prine, and I've lived here for 6 years now.
And I'm Luke Adamson. I help put on shows locally with my production company that I call Sanguine Productions. I've lived here since 2015.
Nice. And I'm really excited to have both of them on the show today because I guess we both met through either mutual friends or doing stuff in the music scene. And with both of them, it came up, talking out back at a show oh, you like the Avett brothers. And this is kind of a band where if you meet someone else who's a fan of them, you're kind of instantly oh, this person's a good person, or I want to get, I relate to this person or in some way. I feel like Avett Brothers fans are almost a specific type of person. I don't know.
Totally.
So anyway, it's cool to meet other people that kind of get it, I guess. Yeah. In case you're unfamiliar, the Avett Brothers are an Americana group that formed in the early 2000s. And so the main members are Scott and Seth Avett, who are two brothers, obviously. And they grew up in North Carolina together. And so they've kind of always played music together and eventually started a band, I guess, around their college years. And they've had different members come in and out as the years go on, but the main other two members are Joe Kwan and Bob Crawford, which we'll get to later. Anyway, so I guess we can just get started kind of talking about their beginnings. So they used to just play these kind of local shows around North Carolina at bars or whatever. And so this is around the late 90s, early 2000s. So in the year 2000, they put out a self-titled EP, the Avett Brothers, and they were very much unpolished in the early years. There's a documentary about them, and there's also live videos on YouTube. But in that documentary, they talk quite a bit about how they were kind of punk country. They were very not in the sense that it was rockabilly, but in the sense that it was very unpolished and yelling on stage and foot stomping and breaking strings. And I think that passion that you see in the beginning very much transcends through all their music still today. So it's kind of an interesting starting point for them. So after that, we get to their first record, which is kind of when this band starts really getting going. So they put out an actual record they self-released in 2002 called Country Was, which I guess we can kind of elaborate on a bit.
Yeah, I think the first thing that jumps to mind with Country Was is that time of, just that time on the planet. I think that was around the time that the movie that's kind of infamous now, Oh Brother Where Art Thou, had come out.
Yep.
That made a lot of ripple effects in music, as far as repopularizing that style of music. And so, I think at that time everybody was coming off of the emergence of grunge music and that in the 90s. And so I think that Scott and Seth have pointed out many times that when they were growing up, they felt a need to rebel against their roots and their upbringing and where they came from. But around this time when they formed the band, they sort of got over that and started to embrace it a little bit more. And I think that's maybe where the title comes from.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a good point to make. I wrote about that recently. Just the Oh Brother Where Art Thou soundtrack kind of started Americana as far as like solidifying it as a genre, and that's like when it got really popular, and it did make all these ripples through music, because you even had people like who were doing more popular country stuff, like Alison Krauss or whatever, like kind of become Americana. And so I think this record kind of is like a really good example of like not quite amateur, but just like early musicians like really embracing that kind of like wave in music, which is really cool. Yeah.
It definitely didn't seem like there was a lot of what the Avett Brothers were doing in North Carolina with this new generation of kids, but you know, in the sense country was like, the people of North Carolina know that the bluegrass and folk scene in North Carolina like ran really strong. I mean, we were talking about Merlefest earlier, and that's been a staple in North Carolina forever. So, you know, this idea that like they were kind of taking on something that they had once rejected from a past generation, and maybe realizing that that was actually the thing to do. You know, the downstairs sessions or whatever they called it is what it started as. But I think they realized pretty soon after that it was going to be more true, it feels like. Yeah.
It's like they definitely caught on. Yeah, because it's like it was definitely part of their roots, but then they kind of caught on with the fact that it was being popularized elsewhere. And it's kind of like got those like kind of old country tropes in it, like the, you know, sad songs, whatever. But you definitely see like their early cleverness here, and I feel like the Avett Brothers' trademark is definitely their lyrics. Like, among other things, for me, that's kind of the first thing that stood out to me. And a lot of people I know, they're Avett Brothers fans, are like English majors and other writers and stuff kind of thing. So I think you kind of see the beginnings of that here. And there's a few like really good songs on here. Like, it's a pretty solid album for their first record. Absolutely. So November Blue is an important one to point out, because later there's like a response to that song, which is like one of my favorite Avett Brothers songs. And then so the first track on this record is Pretty Girl from Matthews, and a running theme in a lot of their work, several records have a Pretty Girl from blank song on it, Pretty Girl from the Airport, Pretty Girl from, you know, wherever. And so these are kind of just like songs written to a girl or about a girl kind of thing, and totally in like a respectful kind of love letter way. So it's kind of interesting, you know, you could like listen to all the Pretty Girl songs, whatever, in a row, and that's like a thing. So right after this, they start touring kind of outside North Carolina, and this is also when they start getting like a real band together, I guess right before this record. But there's a story where apparently Bob Crawford like bought like a stand-up bass and like was just like trying to join a band, and they were trying to like start a band, and they met each other on like Craigslist or the newspaper or something like that, and met in a parking lot, and he like played bass for them, and they were like, cool, you're in the band. And he didn't actually know how to play the instrument, but it kind of worked out because he had like the spirit there. And I totally respect that, because like, you know, sometimes you just have to go in blind and be like, I don't really know how to do this, but I'm gonna learn. And it worked out. Like, they definitely have this huge like chemistry there. So they had like on and off touring people other than them, and when we get into the later albums, we'll talk about like the more solid members. So after Country Was, like, I guess it might have still been in 2002, they put out the Live at Double Door Inn record that they just kind of like self-released, this like live record, and this is when they get signed to Ramsar Records. Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about that. Ramsar Records.
Yeah, Ramsar Records out of Concord, North Carolina, which is also where the Avett Brothers are from, or grew up, and they had a huge influence on me as a kid. Just kind of talking about myself and my history of the Avett Brothers. I found them when I was young, which I'm sure we'll probably talk about. But when I did find them, pretty soon after I found Ramsar Records, who was just a guy releasing true North Carolina music, Dolph Ramsar, who's just releasing true music, and that started with the Avett Brothers. It was, I guess he heard Scott and Seth somewhere and believed in them, and was, I think, a pro tennis coach. Yeah. He taught tennis. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. And was like, I'm going to start a record label because I believe in these guys. And he just ended up keeping doing that, it seems like.
I think I saw somewhere that after he first saw them, he said that he went home and he saw his wife, of course, and told her, you know, I don't know exactly what I saw tonight, but I know that it was really special.
That's awesome.
And that kind of just like, you know, set, you know, the everything in motion as far as him wanting to be involved with them. You know, I think that one of the surprising things that I found like with their relationship with Dolph is that even though things have grown and changed for them throughout the course of their career, he's still remained their manager and involved with them. And on top of that, even more interesting is that they've never had like a signed contract situation. This was like one of those old-timey verbal handshake agreements that
I've heard that. Yeah,
people don't really get down with that anymore, and you know, with good reason, I suppose.
There's
but
some reasons behind that, but
this is a prime example
cool,
of it working out, of it being, you know, of people with integrity coming together.
That's what it is. I mean, it's kind of like two honest people who believed in what they were doing.
Right. Yeah. Just trying to make the best music they can make.
Yeah, they still put out great music, but I didn't. Was Live at the Double Door Inn? Is that when they were? Is that the album that Dolph Ramser heard? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they put that out like right before, and so I guess he had like heard that, but then the first time we saw them was at like some bar show. I think that was in the documentary, and it was like, it's just crazy. If you look up, if you're listening to this podcast, you should totally look up their really early videos, like 2002, and it's just crazy. Like they're literally. Like, it's like I don't know what I'm seeing. They're screaming. They're just, like, yelling and playing a banjo and, like, breaking stuff. And, like, it's just, like, they're so passionate. And, like, that does say a lot, though. They are really, like, have a lot of integrity as people. And that definitely is a thread that runs through their music and their personal lives. And, yeah, they just really stayed true to their roots. They're on this, like, North Carolina label. So 2003, right after they get signed, they put out a Carolina Jubilee.
Woo.
Really good record. Avett Brothers, like you said, you discovered them when you were young, and this was definitely, I was kind of late to like getting into cool music, I guess, whatever that means. And like in high school, you know, cool like music. I was like in high school, like 9th grade and like, you know, 2011, whatever ish, and this was one of the first bands. I think someone gave me their like NPR Tiny Desk on a burned CD, and then I got a Carolina Jubilee and 2 other records also burned on a CD, probably off YouTube or something, and like played that in my car all the time. And that was like one of my first like favorite bands. So a Carolina Jubilee is it's
a special album.
Yeah.
It really is a Carolina Jubilee. Like, being from I'm from Durham, North Carolina, and so like being from Durham, it's incredible how true to form growing up in North Carolina is to the Avett Brothers, and specifically Carolina Jubilee. Like that song "Smoking Our Lights."
Oh man.
About you know, like going to a high school football game, leaving a high school football game with a girl, like a fading love that lasted the summer. You know, a lot of those songs that about love, and you know, there's
say a lot about growing up in the South. Even though I was in North Carolina, I was in the middle of nowhere, Mississippi, and like would listen to these songs about, you know what they're saying, driving down a dirt road, or like your relationship with God changing as you get like older, like growing up religious and then like questioning that, and like not even in a really confrontational sense, but just like this is how we grew up and we're gonna sing about it. So it really is like really pure and honest.
Me and God don't need a middleman.
Yeah.
I mean that was what I was thinking, you know, when I was 13 and in youth group at the local
exactly.
church.
Like, why do I need this like thing in between if it's like, you know, exactly. So you do think about all that. And then there's classic stuff like I Killed Sally's Lover, like whatever, like really just
classic
like kind of
ballad.
like folk, like a folk song kind of. So this is a good one, and it definitely it's just so like, you know, it was a self-release, whatever. So this is like their first real record, and it kind of feels like that. It's a little bit more polished, whatever, but it really is true, I think, to just their environment. And so it's like a record that you kind of appreciate for what it's worth.
Definitely.
Sure.
Feels like if you want to see where their energy came from, Country is the record to start with. I mean, it's banging on guitar and banging on banjo. Yeah. And like trying to say things that are true, but you know, aren't necessarily profound, which I think is a theme in the Avett Brothers music. But, you know, it really is just everyday stuff that you deal with as like a young high schooler or probably, you know, a college kid. Really any of it. It's kind of universal, like just love stories and fleeting love and breakups and emotions.
I think it's easy to see the development, and the songs are just on a different level when you move into Carolina Jubilee than they were on country was. You mentioned "Smoking Our Lights." I think that's a standout track without a doubt.
Really good one, yeah.
I also
Absolutely.
like "Offering," and there's two Pretty Girl songs, I believe, Annapolis and Raleigh.
Yeah, Pretty Girl from
Pretty
Raleigh.
Girl from Raleigh is such a
Whoo-wee.
good song.
That's probably the meanest Avett Brothers song.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of
They don't have a
those.
lot of
There's
mean
only,
songs.
even when he gets a divorce in their last album,
They're
he's
not
like,
mean.
I'm sorry. He's like,
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna cry, like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And
Well,
this one,
it's-
he's like, it's a little angry.
It's an interesting way to deal with a failed relationship, or everyone listening to this, we all take stabs at these things with people, and a lot of times unfortunately things just don't work out between people. And so for these guys independently to be able to just work through that and then have a song to show for it, I think is really awesome. And I think we've already highlighted the Pretty Girl series like being a theme throughout their records. I think that's cool that they've maintained that and they take it serious enough to continue it. But yeah, it's very brave of them to try to deal with the songs in that way, or to try to deal with their relationships and their past in that way.
Yeah.
And have something really cool to show
Yeah, you
for
definitely
it. Like
feel like the Pretty Girl series is fleeting. It's like it's a different girl.
Yeah.
And they're just like, it's just such a short relationship that they maybe couldn't write another song about her. So it was just another pretty girl. They all seem to be kind of fleeting, especially
Yeah.
Pretty Girl from
Well, it
Raleigh.
also gives them a little bit of a cop out too, because if
exactly.
if the young lady thinks starts connecting the dots a little bit when she hears it, they can have a little bit of
It
deniability
could be
there.
anyone, yeah. It
True.
could be anyone.
Could be any Pretty Girl.
The Pretty
from
Girl series is
Annapolis.
great, though.
Yeah, it is. It's really good. And I feel like Carolina Jubilee is like a lot of their albums up until about maybe like 2000, before pre-2009 maybe, is like when they are pretty young and going through all this. And I just remember when I got into them, I was a teenager, and like their music is very nostalgic to me for this reason, but it was like everything was the end of the world, and I had so many feelings all the time, and it was just like a lot. And it's like I could listen to this music and be like, oh, I'm not the only one that feels this way. And like they put it into like, this like short little lyric, and like you said, like true but not necessarily profound. But I think there's a time in everyone's life where they kind of need something like that. Like you just need simple, like simply put words of like how you're feeling, just so you don't go insane kind of thing. And it doesn't have to be anything like important or like artistic or whatever. It can just be like, and that's kind of the simplicity of like the folk roots and everything. Like it's all like truly, like we said, just a reflection of the environment kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That I can think of many songs that they've written that upon hearing them completely related to right away, just feeling like having a feeling of, man, that's exactly what I've been feeling. That's exactly what I've been thinking. And I wasn't able to describe it that way. But hearing these lyrics, like it just sums it all up and kind of hits the nail on the head.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
That's happened
and
for me
it's
over and
simple
over.
stuff, like just very simple things. So it is good. It's like comforting. Like it's like, okay, like they get it. Like, it's
Right.
not the end of the world.
Well, you
kind
have
of
to be
thing.
simple to get. Yeah, I feel like you have to write something simple to get to like a lot of people, which seems to be what they do. It's almost like anyone who hears them can relate to it, and I feel like it's because it's so simple they can kind of get to base level feelings.
Which is kind of pretty smart, like I think music is definitely a way to process any feeling, but not all emotion has to be sophisticated, and it doesn't even have to be emotionless. Like it doesn't have to be like a factory pop song to get to a lot of people. Like it does just have to be relatable, like to everyday people.
Exactly.
And not even to the point where country music is like talking about like horses and beer, like whatever. It's just like I like got my feelings hurt and I cried
Right.
about it under the stars.
Not the
and,
superficial relations, but like real stuff.
Just like real authentic, which they really are.
Yeah. If Country wasn't an introduction to like the Avett Brothers being able to do that, this definitely was for someone growing up in the South. And
another step forward for them for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So the next year, 2004, they're really touring in between all these, just doing like, the living out of a van thing, like going to play these like country festivals or whatever. And I think they had a pretty diverse audience, which they still do today, where you have kind of like the indie people, the Americana. Now you kind of have like a rock fan base. But here they just had, a lot of like small town or like whatever festivals, Merle Fest or like whatever. So anyway, in between that time, they also recorded Mignonette. So in 2004, they put that out. And this is a much longer album. It's like 20 songs. And
Awesome.
Yeah, this is really good. It definitely, to me, is their first, like, really serious record. Not that the others weren't, but this one is just more, it's better produced. It's, like, just sounds great. And this has some of my, like, favorite love songs of all time on it that I, like, keep on a playlist. And I don't know, it's just, like, really good, and it's very sentimental. It's very sweet. It's a really good record. I'm trying to think of standout tracks on this one. I think Nothing Short of Thankful is really good.
Yeah, absolutely. At the Beach, that's a standout.
At the Beach. I saw them play that on the beach in 2014. Yeah, they played At the Beach on the beach, and it was really good. Yeah. But they didn't play If It's the Beaches, which is like my favorite song, which we can get to later. But they only played that one.
Oh, that's a good favorite song. That's a great one.
Yeah, it's a really great one.
At the Beach is Dancing with No Music.
Yeah,
there's just nothing. Many good ones. Yeah, there's nothing like, kind of like you said, the like. They were in love at this point. You can tell.
Oh, yeah. They're like, like honeymoon phase. This album sounds like what a honeymoon phase feels like.
But yet, like, the concept is so dark. It's like the Mignonette was a ship that sunk and all the, everyone drowned and potentially resorted to cannibalism.
Right.
But that you wouldn't know by listening to At the Beach.
Not necessarily. I think that one of the standouts for me on Mignonette is a song titled The New Love Song. And I think that it's really cool that it has such a simple title to it, for it to be, dealing with some pretty complex situations. The song basically sounds to me like Scott, who is the lead singer on this track. I guess we should probably make mention of the fact that the Avett brothers will oftentimes swap the duties of taking the lead vocal and swap off even in between song or during a song, trade off on who that is. But in the New Love Song, it seems to be subject matter wise just like a man pleading with his lover and trying to apologize for the way that he's acted and how he's been carrying on, and just hoping that through her grace and her who she is, she's able to understand that, and they're able to move forward together. But it's awesome. I love the New Love Song.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I think I feel like I actually have a couple favorite songs off of this one, but Please Pardon Yourself is one of my favorites, because I feel like when I did hear this when I was like in high school, like literally just the lyric that's like, don't be hard on yourself, please pardon yourself, do the best you can, and that won't go unseen. I still like tell myself that sometimes.
It's funny to think that we're the first generation raised by the Avett brothers. Like, not all of us, but us three in this room were all pretty much raised on like what the Avett brothers had to say.
Influenced my sense of like morality a bit, because
specifically with this album in particular, it really gets into things like
your music is so impressionable, and like I really like was like navigating what my musical tastes were, and when I like latched onto something like this, I feel like it really did like reflect in my life, like to hear these lyrics. And like it is like I still think like I have like a running bit, I'll just be talking to my friends and be like, oh, in the words of like whoever, and like whatever, but like the Avett brothers really are like, I'll be giving advice to someone and be like, in the Avett brothers song they talked about this, and they're like, oh, like that's really true, and I'm like, yeah, it is.
I think I've always had like deep connections with music, all kinds of music. But I think that there's just really no contest as far as like for myself personally, like just relating to their music just way deeper than anything I've ever listened to.
Yeah.
It seemed, I almost felt that they had their eye on me. Like a lot of the songs would seem to have relevance in my own life. And
totally. And you're not even probably at times in your life you weren't even necessarily relating, but you were listening and you just understood it, like as if it was advice.
Yeah,
it's really almost like great Big Brother advice.
It does, you learn something from an Avett Brothers song, at least some of them that maybe you didn't know before. You know what I mean? Like you learn an emotion that maybe you hadn't like fully fleshed out,
especially
as a kid
as far
or
as love and stuff. Like I feel like I didn't really experience that as a teenager, and then like when you really do feel that, to like look back on a song and be like, oh wow, like that was like what they said, like I'm feeling that now. Or a lot of the songs, like Pretty Girl at the Airport, for me, like I listened to it all the time, it was one of my favorites, and then like there was like an exact situation in my life that like related to that song, and I was like, oh, like that advice I got years ago, like
I can deal with
I understand now, because I'm going through it, and like I get it. And like some of those songs, like that song's like heartbreaking. Like I love to cry to that song. It's so good.
But it's good, and like it teaches raised on the Avett Brothers. That's us.
Raised on the Avett Brothers. I really was like that was like got me through high school, and I think I mean it really like helped me out. Like that was like a crutch I like went to, and I like needed some kind of reassurance that being in a place where you're like confused about like religion and where you're gonna go to college and all those like things that feel like the end of the world at the time. It's so nice to have a record like this where it's like, oh, I'm feeling this. Absolutely. And I get it, and someone gets me.
A gift from Melody Ann in particular,
oh man,
which just seems to be the like magnum opus of their ideas about life. They did it early on. It's just pretty much like stay positive about everything because you can do it. Yeah. And obviously that's not exactly what it's saying, but I feel like hearing that was important to me. And it's important to hear that in an impressionable time in your life.
Big
to not be discouraged. There's so much out there that's ready to knock you down, ready to knock you back. And these guys, they're not going to be stopped. And it comes through in the words that they write and in the songs that they play.
Totally.
And anybody can get behind that and gain something from it. I think that there's like a life cycle to their songs, I feel like, and not that every song deals with it the same way, but the themes are throughout, and it goes all the way through to their most recent work, of stripping things down, rebuilding, being devastated by a situation or something that happens in your life, and then growing from that. Just like self-growth, self-development. It comes through from these early albums we've been discussing, and it's you can see that thread carried on through till today with their music.
Yeah, you can just kind of tell they were like raised right. Like they know how to like make up their mistakes and like never lose sight. So right after Mignonette, they put out a second live record. And I think this might be their most popular live record just because it's been out so long. But it's good. It's from... Was this one recorded at one place or multiple?
No, multiple
Yeah,
places.
that's what I thought.
There's a couple songs in Raleigh, I know for a fact, because I knew the venue. Because I used to go there, and I thought it was cool that they were recorded there when I was a kid.
Nice.
I can't remember now what. Maybe King's Barcade? Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Pretty Girl from Raleigh and the... How do you say that one song on Mignonette? The one that's like another language. You know what I'm talking about?
I have it pulled up right here. Let me see.
It's the instrumental song.
Oh, Complaintative,
something like that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that one.
If you look up the live record, you should listen to that one.
Yeah, it's pretty special.
Those two were recorded in Raleigh. You can tell the quality like gets really bad at the end of the record.
Yeah, and I love live albums. I think I say that in every podcast, but like huge advocate for live albums because you can truly get the essence of a band in a live record, like
especially this band.
Yeah, maybe we should talk about that.
And it's just a whole we should talk about that. So like the Avett Brothers,
there's a huge demand for their live
the
music.
reason they're even qualified as like a cult band for this podcast, I would say, because I'm usually pretty picky about that definition, but they definitely are because they have a huge cult following because of their live performance
and have had it for forever,
for years
since day one.
These live records, and that's why they got so popular. I think people would like follow them around or whatever, and so like they have the second live record. So they have almost as many live records as they do studio records, and they're like 4 years into their career. So the Avett Brothers live are crazy, and that's literally why they are the Avett Brothers, is because of their live performance.
Totally.
Man, I don't even know
when
if I have
When
words.
did you see? What was your first show?
What was my first show? I think I saw them in like Gulf Shore, either Gulf Shores or Mobile, when I was in like maybe 10th or 11th grade.
Nice.
Yeah. And then my second show was Hangout Fest.
Whoa.
Which was crazy.
Yeah,
they like headlined, but also like Jack Johnson was playing at the same time, so everybody was like, I'm gonna go see Jack Johnson. I was like, I'm gonna get front row for the Avett Brothers. See you guys, have fun. Like
now they like play with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Jack Johnson, yeah. So I've seen them like a lot of times, but I think I don't even know if I have words to describe their live show. They're like kind of a jam band, which you say about a lot of bands, but like they jam out, like they like totally like it's pretty fun.
It feels totally mutual when you're like at an Avett Brothers show. I mean, I haven't really been going for the past like 3 or 4 years, but when I used to go when I was in like 8th and 9th grade, and they were playing smaller venues, like it was really like you were all just doing stuff together.
Yeah.
You know,
They're feeding off the crowd, no doubt.
Exactly. And I know a lot of people say that about a lot of bands, but I mean, the Avett Brothers
No, it really is uniquely.
It's uniquely.
And they
feeding
go
off of
about
that.
even creating the set list, like thinking about where they're
I
playing.
mean, they didn't start doing a set list, you know, until
Yeah.
I think maybe I Love and You or later.
Right.
Yeah.
So they got
Is
a
what
lot
I've
more
heard.
popular. I always thought that was really intriguing to me when I first got into them. Is just that off the wall thing, or that even when they started doing the set list, it was not that it was different every show. Like if once they got to the era where they
Sure,
were making
yeah.
set lists, they were making
Yeah.
them like a couple of hours before showtime.
Right,
Yeah,
it
and
wasn't
it was,
like here's the show for this
based
tour.
on where they were. And it's interesting because a lot of other bands, especially like bands in that canon, I guess, like Americana or jam band or whatever, you can look at like, oh, they were in Atlanta yesterday, what are they going to play in Nashville, and it's almost the exact set list. And the Avett Brothers, you can't predict.
No
way.
And that's what I love, because I've seen them so many times, I'm like, oh, I want to hear this song, but I know I'll just have to see them like 3 more times to hear it, which is
Yeah.
And even
Great.
when they make the set list, they still, I mean, I'm pretty sure even still now, like they would, will still call out different stuff during the show, just
Yeah.
like whatever they're feeling. If they
Right.
get to a point and they're like, let's do this, like
Yeah.
they still like give themselves a license to do that.
It's very much based on the energy in the room, and like
Totally.
it's not like a performance where like, you know, whatever, it's like this loud, rowdy, spirited, crazy like exchange of energy between
The first time I ever
audience.
moshed was at an Avett Brothers show.
That's perfect. That
And
explains
I was-
it.
yeah.
Like
Punk grass,
moshing
baby.
to
12 years. I was
banjos.
12 years old, and I moshed at an Avett Brothers show.
That's so
no,
good.
no idea that
That's
was gonna
so
happen.
good.
But
Yeah.
but that explains it. Like it
That does
was.
explain it.
It was
You
like
can mosh, and then you could like cry the next song. You could do a
Ex-
little
and then
foot
everyone
stomping.
would be
You could
silent.
like square dance. There are
Totally.
songs where it's like literal
you could hear a pin
silence.
drop,
Like
and then they
everybody's
could
like,
play a song where everyone's dancing.
yeah, it's like
and
amazing.
it would just feel totally natural,
Yeah.
and you'd be right along for the ride.
Ugh, yeah, seeing them live is so good. It's so good. Just a very pure experience every time, I think, and I think they get that that's part of their thing.
think
Like
they
they know, they very much know.
Well, I mean, I'm on top of them knowing. I feel like that is they not only know, but they practice that
Yeah.
hard. I mean, I feel like they've done everything they can. I've never heard a band, and I don't know if they still do this, but I've never heard a band say thank you maybe more than the Avett Brothers on stage.
Yeah.
Like when they were.
and mean it, man.
Oh, they totally mean it.
They really mean
totally
it. They get
Yeah.
emotional during the shows too. Like you can tell they're so happy that people like
Yeah.
care about what they're doing.
Genuinely saying thanks. Like there's nothing superficial or like.
Oh,
they're-
yeah, I mean-
they're not putting on for anybody.
No
man.
one would say thank you after every song,
Right.
unless you mean it, and they would say
Yeah.
thank you after every.
Yeah.
Right.
They'd be.
They're always
after
like,
every
"Thank
song
you
would be
guys,
thank you, we're
thank
the
you
Avett
guys."
Brothers.
Yeah.
Thank you, we're the Avett Brothers. Here's
Yeah.
another song. Thank you, we're the
Yeah.
Avett Brothers.
So good, so good.
They
They
just-
just seem like the purest people, like just
Yeah, they
such
do.
good humans. Like
But live is incredible. First time I saw them live was they were opening up for Guster, and I had no idea who they were. So I went in blind and came out, and that was it. I mean, for the rest of my whole life changed after that, pretty much.
yeah,
Yeah.
Like the reason I'm here today would probably be because of that show.
yeah.
Which is insane to think about.
Right.
But it is. I
No,
mean,
the Avett Brothers were
it
definitely
changed
a
my whole life
trajectory
after that
into
show
me,
when I
like
was like 12 years
being
old.
into the career field I'm in.
Exactly,
Like, they
that's what I'm
introduced me
saying.
to so
Yeah.
much other music that I was like, oh my god, like I wouldn't have thought about moving to Nashville unless I
Right.
had like heard this band and then gotten into all the other bands I got into because of that.
I love that the Avett Brothers as a gateway, to leading you
Definitely.
elsewhere.
Oh,
Leading you to,
definitely
to other
I have-
things that are similar.
They
and,
were my
and great.
gateway to so much just because they were like
Being a good
literally
person.
one of the first bands I heard. They were my gateway into like all of indie rock as well as like all of Americana,
Sure.
which led to country because I was so anti-country. And then once I got into Americana, I was like, oh, like Dwight Yoakam is
I was the
cool.
exact
like,
same way, yeah.
You know, whatever. But oh my god, like there's so many artists I've found because of the Avett Brothers. I'm trying
That
to
really
think of
speaks
how
to their
many,
blend
yeah.
of genres. Like we've obviously
True,
pointed out the
yeah.
fact that they're very Americana and kind of country, but I mean, let's be honest. Like they get down, on a piano like Elton John. Like they play all kinds of music. They've
really
never been tied down to any one kind of thing.
Yeah.
They're just
And even in
themselves.
even when it was just the banjo, guitar, and kick drums and bass, it still was almost genreless.
Yeah.
Like the bluegrass people, like I remember the old people at Merlefest would get upset that the Avett Brothers would play. Because
Offended.
it wasn't. They'd be offended because it wasn't true to its form. But it also, you couldn't play at a punk club. I mean, you couldn't play anywhere, but you could also play anywhere. It's kind of how it felt.
Right.
Which is how, I don't know, I think genres, like, the more I've done this podcast, I went into this wanting to learn a lot of things, and I think with every band we've talked about, there's at least one point where they are kind of between genres or genreless, and I think that may like almost be a key to like a really great band, because a lot of them kind of move in between genres, or like, I don't know, genres are just so arbitrary. I feel like they might even hold people back, because there is like whole gimmick thing, but with someone like the Avett Brothers, they're just making music, and like it doesn't need a genre, and that's really important.
So it's interesting you bring up how they led you into other artists.
Oh yeah, I
specifically
definitely want to elaborate on that.
Because of the cover, I think it's Old Joe Clark. They do with that goes into I Killed Sally's Lover, or it could be the other way around. And that was kind of one of the first times I ever discovered traditional bluegrass music. But that is like a microcosm to my relationship with the Avett Brothers and the covers they did and how all of that affected me. I mean, John Prine, the first time I ever heard John Prine was an Avett Brothers song.
Yeah.
You know, I found pretty much the Avett Brothers were a starting point, and all the covers they did just boom expanded out of that.
I know they did a Spanish Pipe Dream cover, and that was the first time I had ever heard that I knew of like a John Prine song where I was like, oh, who's this guy John Prine? I really like those lyrics, and like that, I mean, that changed my life. Like here, and then from there, listening to John Prine's live album and just hearing like Angel from Montgomery, and I was like, oh my god, like I'm in love with this kind of music. Like I'm in love with this, and like just like their openers. Like in later years, I saw Jessica Lee Mayfield open for them, and then later saw her and Seth do their album they did together of Elliott Smith covers, and she became one of my like favorite artists, and for a while was like just her music was very much relatable to my life in the same way, because it's this like dark kind of country pseudo rock, like whatever, and
really good pairing with them, for sure.
Yeah, for sure, she is a good pairing, and they've even covered some of her stuff, like we were talking about the other day, which song, the I Could Care Less About You song.
For Today. I think that's the first video that I ever saw online of the Avett Brothers.
Oh,
and
such
I just
a good
was
song.
knocked out by that song.
I listened
Jessica
to her
Lee
version.
Mayfield song.
Yeah,
Just
and I
for clarity.
heard them play it, and that was like the first song I learned how to play in guitar, because I loved it. But yeah, and stuff like that, she became really important. I ended up getting to like interview her and stuff and talk about the Avett Brothers, and then like Langhorne Slim and like Pokey Lafarge and like just all these random, you know, like Americana cool folky, you know, artists.
It goes into, you know, the covers thing I was talking about earlier. It's not just that, but who they had open for them. And I feel like the general trend there is they just really loved good music.
I think so. And they could vibe with a lot of different genres.
Well, it didn't matter. It didn't seem to matter. It was just, you know, the first time I saw them, they were playing with Brett Dennen and Guster. And those aren't anything like the Avett Brothers. Yeah. But, again, like, I feel like they, for me, it was just you know, kind of this infinite well of music that I could find when I was a kid. But for them, I think there really was, like, a sense of, we love good music and we want people to see this because we know it's good.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why they did, and I think that's so incredible. Good. Just the quality of the artists they brought around them or did covers of.
The company they keep around them are incredible.
Everything from like Bob Dylan, he did like Scott Avett did a One More Night cover, and now that's one of my favorite Bob Dylan songs and helped me, you know, dig into his discography. Just oh man, yeah, I think they just really appreciate quality music, and that reflects in their music. It shows that they have these influences, and I appreciate that so much, being 16 years old and like going on YouTube and finding new music from them that ended up being good and is still relevant to my life. Everything from Doc Watson to these newer artists. So yeah, really, really good stuff. Yeah, so after Live Volume 2 in 2006, they put out Four Thieves Gone, the Robinsonville Sessions, and this is a fantastic album, and it was recorded over the course of 10 days in Robinsonville, North Carolina. It's quite a long album, I think. There's for
it to be just songs, over 10 days, they covered a lot of ground.
They did. I can't believe they did all this in 10 days.
Not to mention 6 songs that aren't on the album, are on the vinyl version.
True,
no doubt.
So it's a long album.
This album starts off just with a bang. It's just high energy, and this is just like a great album. And it kind of dips in and out of that energy, but like first song, Talk on Indolence, like the intro there is I don't even know how to describe that.
Just talking about going out of your mind and trying to get it back.
Yeah, basically.
A little like a concentrated burst of Avett energy.
Yeah,
is what it is.
I feel like there's a lot of good ones on here.
Yeah, definitely my favorite album. I've thought about it hard, long and hard. And
that's how I feel like I still don't have like one.
I think I think that's it. I think For Thieves Gone is my favorite.
It's really good. 40 East, like I still will drive down 40 East and like play that song, and I'm like, oh my god, like this is relevant to my life. Like,
well, I drove down like almost every weekend in high school I had to drive down 40 East.
Yeah,
to go to my friend's house, and I mean it's just
you'd see those signs and start thinking
about it.
I'd
see those signs and I'd be listening to the song, and 16 in July. You get your license in the summer.
16 in July.
I got my license in the summer.
Oh boy, 16 in July is what it feels like to be 16 in July.
Yeah, that's
and that's like when I got into them, which was perfect. So I found this song and I'm like, oh, 16, like it's meant to be, but like it is, like it's relatable. Really it's so relatable. My favorite song on this record is "Denouncing November Blues," which is a response to one of the first ones. But this like song. Oh, the lyrics are so clever. Sure. There's, like, the specific lyrics I like the best is, like, he's basically talking about, like, he falls in love with this girl and, like, they're, like, oh, so in love, and then he, like, has to move on and she doesn't want to, kind of small town stuff that we've all been through. And then, he, like, talks about leaving, and the lyrics are, like, drove 10,000 miles in 7 days while writing a book called Being a Free Man. Met more people than the president. The good times came and the good times went, and I learned how to ignore my hunger pangs. I looked ahead to the open road, thought about people and what they know, and wrote a book called People Don't Know Nothing. Like,
no matter what they tell you.
So good. And then, like, at the very end, I can't find it right now, but he's, like, ended back up in the town with the girl, so I wrote a book called Life in Prison, Volume 1.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, like...
It's really, really good, especially if you've listened to November Blue and you know that, like, heartbreaking, like just plea to find a way to reconcile this and carry on together. And then
this,
a couple years later,
irreverent version of that song where he's like,
he's dealt with the end of things.
Like, man.
Well, now he's looking at the relationship from the rearview mirror and kind of like looking back on it, and like it helped him. He gained from it, but what he gained maybe more so than like the relationship itself is just like that lesson learned and that the new perspective he's found. You may have made a mountain out of a molehill about a certain thing. I kind of feel like that about the lyrics, like he's like, this was something that I really struggled with at the time, but now looking back on it, I've come so far from it, and to look back at how I struggled with it, it's almost funny to think about, like that it came and went and now it's over, and at the time I just felt like my world was falling apart.
Yeah. And just to give some context, this is like behind what sounds like something being played on a back porch with like 6 dudes, like 5 PBRs deep.
I think you talked about this, the quote about like what Bob Dylan is doing is like flying over the Midwest, and John Prine is like playing in their living room. Like the Avett Brothers sound like you're just sitting in a cabin in the woods listening to like your relatives.
And that's exactly where they were. So they obviously did something right. They can do it. I mean, that's literal feeling. Literally, they can evoke that feeling. I think that's probably why it's my favorite album. I think that it's pretty incredible that they can come with these songs and their energy and make something as special as that. Like that can not only like feel each song individually, but like get the feeling that each song seems to be, like you said, like played in your living room. Yeah. Which is exactly what it was. They set up in a living room and played those songs, and the fact that they can convey that so well is just kind of blows my mind.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of songs on this album that are just a lot like that, like So Clever, Left on Laura, Right on Lisa is about being in love with 2 people at the same time, and he's like,
what are you supposed to do about that?
Yeah, and then he like loses them both, which is like, what do you expect to happen?
That's Distraction number 74.
Oh, you're right. Sorry,
Left on Laura, Left on Lisa is actually one of my other favorite songs on that album. Distraction 74 is about losing 2 lovers, but
That's a good one.
It's a great one, yeah.
And then I really like Famous Flower of Manhattan, and it's almost cheesy, but it's like a really simple metaphor about like how if you pick a flower, it dies. Like if you want to like hold this beauty for yourself, like you have a dead flower when you could leave it alone and let it grow. And it's the same thing, like he falls in love with this girl who lives in Manhattan, and like he's like, I could take you out of the city, but you wouldn't like be yourself, and you wouldn't be growing as a person. And you can't just like take something that's not yours kind of thing out of its environment. It's a really beautiful song. It can be applied to a lot of things in life.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Yeah. This is a really great record. I think even if you skip all the first ones, you should listen to this record, which I don't recommend. You should like listen to them in order. But this record is so good, and it's like just truly like frozen in time, like because they did this out in the woods, like whatever, and it's just so pure and so good.
It really captures a lot of their like spirit. Like I think that we talked about the fact that they did so many live albums. I think there was a lot of pull that they were getting from their fan base and from people outside of the band to create something that was as representative as they could of what they were doing live on stage. And I think that they really like did a really good job of that for the first time. And in their growth and their development on For Thieves Gone. I feel like they really were able to translate a lot of what happens at the shows onto the record, into the grooves.
Yeah, the energy was there. It was just a genuine record. Well, like Denouncing November Blue, it's also where the title of the album came from, because they like stole it from a Charlie Daniels song, and they were four thieves making an album.
That's so good. Yeah.
Four Thieves Gone.
Because
they stole a Charlie Daniels song.
That's so funny. Of all the people.
But it's just genuine. I mean, who the hell puts a song about the song 2 songs before was stolen, and we're gonna write a song about how we stole that song? It's just a bunch of guys being genuine. Man. It feels like
so good. So the next year, also like they're putting a record out almost every year, which is pretty tight. I feel like a lot of the older bands I've talked about on this podcast do that because it's kind of how the industry worked then. But for this band, it was still a bit before streaming, but still, this like they were putting out records every year. Like they were just working hard. This was their full-time thing, and they were gonna do it. Put out these records or bust. Like this is what they did, and it was great. So I'm very excited to talk about the next one. I think I will say this is my favorite record, but the one after that is also my favorite record. In 2007, they put out the record Emotionalism. And before we get into it, it's important to note that this is when Joe Kwan joined the band. He is a really integral part of their live show. He is the one who posts the set list after every show and is kind of the only one with a social media presence also nowadays, which recently. Is especially kind of important with bands nowadays. So Joe Kwan joins the band for this record, and they love him so much they just keep him on, and it's really great. And they also, for this record, won their first awards. So they won the Americana Association Awards, gave them Group of the Year and Emerging Artist of the Year, which are huge awards. There's
huge
not
honors.
that many. Yeah, there's not that many awards that Americana gives out, and it's kind of hard to even get nominated just because there's so many bands in the Americana canon, and so maybe however many awards they give out.
Yeah, Emerging Artist specifically is
the biggest one. That's really important.
Yeah, you remember who won that?
You do, and they always end up getting really big because I'm trying to think. I don't remember who. Yeah, Tyler Childers won this year, and I was hoping you would. I feel like he's on trajectory to be the next dude if people will pay attention in the right ways, which is another discussion. But before that, it's anyone who gets that ends up being big. They're being noticed. So they also made their TV debut with songs off this record on Late Night with Conan, which definitely just boosted their audience hugely. They're really getting into the eye of the public here. Yeah. So Emotionalism as an album, though, oh man, it's pretty much perfect. Yeah, I could talk a lot on this one. I literally can't tell a standout song because they're kind of all my favorite.
Sure. Salina for me, but just because of that ending. Carolina someday.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I really love Paranoia in B flat major.
Yeah.
Sure. The Weight of Lies. I mean,
The Weight of Lies might be my favorite one. Yeah. That's one of my favorite songs of all time by then, because it's
song.
Yep. You can put this on and let it run. I mean, just let it run from Die 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 all the way to the end.
The Weight of Lies is really good because I remember listening to this a lot right before I moved to Nashville, and you know, when you're leaving a small town that you don't have any opportunity in and was never even good to you in the first place, like, whatever, you're not leaving much behind, but you still feel this guilt, like, this weight, like, oh, like, I'm trying to escape or something, because I think people try to make you feel bad or whatever, but for me, that was a song I repeated a lot the summer right before I moved, and it's like the weight of lies will follow you wherever you go. Like, you don't, like, lies don't need an airplane to chase you down.
You can't run away from your problems. You can't escape who you are.
Yeah, and it's also like reckoning with like the bad and good parts of yourself and taking them with you where you go. It's like you can go somewhere where no one knows your name, but they're eventually going to find it out. And it's like you have to recognize that as a young person, I think, because it's easy to like go about being like, oh, like I'm in this city or I'm like wherever I am, and I don't have to like be held accountable, and like you do. And it's like so good. I mean, Shame is a great song, just like boatloads of shame, like just feeling shit. It's about a feeling,
being too confident, doing something dumb, and then having to be brought down.
Who doesn't know that feeling?
I don't know if anyone
like it happens.
Yeah.
Shame is definitely the prime example for me of a song that I thought was really great upon discovering it, and then the course of my life, it just became really real for me. And like especially the end of the song where the lyrics are, you know, I couldn't help then and now I can. Talking about dealing with seeing another person who's going through a brokenhearted time, and just like you weren't able to do anything or offer them anything because you hadn't experienced that yourself, and then now that you've gone through it, now you can actually help them. And so it kind of flips the song on its head at the very end, where it's he's sort of, I don't want to say ridiculing, but he's definitely like pointing out things early in the song, and then coming back at the end and saying, you know, I wasn't able to really speak on this and help, but now I totally can.
Oh yeah, so
that's some
good.
pretty incredible song. This is right after this album came out was when I started listening to the Avett Brothers and went to that concert. It was right after this came out, and it was, if I've ever worn an album out, it was this album. Like, I think I listened to this for a year, almost nonstop listened to this album when it came out. I remember my parents were driving us to swim practice, which was like 15 or 20 minutes away. And every single day in the car, on the way there and on the way back, it was emotionalism.
Yeah, that was the same for me. Like, when I first got this album in my hands, I couldn't listen to anything else. Like, I was just... Every day on the way to school, my school was like a little bit far away from my house. I would listen to this there on the way back. I listened to this on the way everywhere. It was also right when I got my first car. And so that's, you know, definitely a time in your life. Kind of growing up, you're alone a lot, driving around. I still listen to this one all the time. This is like a go-to. It's like so good. Even though I definitely don't listen to them in the capacity I used to. This is still one I go back to all the time. The Ballad of Love and Hate. I remember I had like a Southern Gothic literature class in college, so I was like maybe my favorite class, and we had to like bring something to read to the class like every week, and it could either be like a short story or like a song or something. And I remember like reading the lyrics of Ballad of Love and Hate and Tales of Coming News off of this to my class.
Two just incredible
Tales
songs.
of Coming News, I think.
Oh man.
I can't ever decide what my total favorite Avett Brothers song is, but like I think it's either If It's the Beaches or Tales of Coming News. But Tales of Coming News is like, it's so long, but the lyrics are so good. It's just like a story, and it's like sad.
It's very in the vein of Dylan, because the verses just keep coming. And there's not particularly a chorus necessarily, but it's painting this great picture of coming to terms with who you are.
Yeah. Other than a fun little guitar riff in between.
Yeah. It's kind of like a 4-part song, I guess I would say. Like there's definitely 4 unique parts of the story. I kind of want to look up the lyrics really quick and
he
just
loves, he loves the girl. The girl or him leaves, you know. But
she leaves, and he's like wondering. He's always like, I wonder when it all changed. Like I wanted to be true, and you wouldn't let me. Like, when did it change? And it's just,
but then it
really captures onto the desperation of like when you care about someone way more than they care about you, kind of thing. And like just like, oh, like when did that change? Like I feel like worthless. Like da-da-da. And then it does flip around at the end of the song.
I love the line in the song where he talks about being confused. And he's just saying, you know, why do you insult me and my friends? And then the very next line, he says, "Who are my friends anyway?"
Oh, stinging!
So
like,
he's dealing with her, and now she's got him thinking about his own relationships with his friends and everything.
Yeah, there's just like, I love the lyric. Like some of it's just so like, It's just like poetic. He's like, I was just a peasant from the highlands. She said, don't call me your mountain girl. I said, don't bother me. I'm trying to write. Don't worry, you ain't my mountain girl. He's like, I'm doing my thing.
Call the preacher, then go call your father. Tell him that the wedding plans.
This song is just a great story. It is very Dylan-esque. It's very kind of back to like the North Carolina roots, like talking about being in the mountains and all these things. But this is like, I think it might be my favorite one. It's just, I love this song so much. It's really good. It's really good.
It's incredible. It's also a bonus track, not originally on the album.
Yeah, that should be noted. Yeah, it is like a bonus track that was released later.
But it's on streaming now, I'm pretty sure. So
it is.
It's included with the album.
There's a couple of old videos, too. It's one that they haven't played a whole lot. And it's made reappearances in the recent years.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And he also, at the very end of this song, I've never seen it live, and I've always wanted to. And the end of the song, he trails off, and sometimes when they play it live, he adds lyrics, because, like, I think the last lyric that, like, in the actual recording is, like, since I was young, I've known a lot of women, and then it, like, cuts off, but it's, like, I can't even remember. There's, like, a whole, like, 8 lines.
Since I was young, I've known a lot of women who said they
give their love to me. And that's, like, something, I'm still waiting. Like, I don't know, it's just, like... Yeah. It's a song where it's just like when your thoughts are like rolling on and kind of thing, and it is kind of the Dylan. He's just telling a story, and it is very stream of consciousness, which I think I like in literature quite a bit. So I think it's like interesting that they made this song, and I think that might be why I like it so much.
Just an incredible album, and
so
worth
good.
noting would be like a distinct change in production, in the sense that there is more production. Yeah, like they've definitely spent more time, more effort on. Making this
which
sound,
is why they won these
awards. Which is the opposite
awards.
of Four Thieves Gone, really. It's like this raw energy done in in a cabin, and this is
in the
something
studio.
that was obviously, they spent a lot of time on. Right. Probably more so than any of their records. I mean, I can't speak for that, but at least it would seem.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely is their first when the music industry, I think, takes them seriously. When the Americana Association is giving them awards, they kind of get into the eye of this audience. And I think a lot changes for the band here, because they do have to get new band members, and they're touring to a bigger capacity, to playing to bigger audiences, and definitely have a solid fan base now, which is really cool. This is kind of like the golden years of the Avett Brothers, in my opinion.
Probably so.
And so after that, they put out the second Gleam in 2000.
We didn't talk about the first Gleam.
Oh, we did it. Yeah, we did it. I totally skipped that.
Well, we could talk about the Gleams.
Yeah,
Gleam
so let's talk about the Gleams. So let's have a moment for the Gleams. So the first Gleam, they put out as kind of an EP, and then the second Gleam ended up being, I guess, a record, but it's just kind of a short. So these are two kind of short releases by them. So the first Gleam... This one kind of reminds me of Mignonette a bit more than Four Thieves Gone, even though it came out right after.
And is it only Scott and Seth?
Yeah,
I think so.
It seems to be like that. And I know that they, during their live show, they would always have these moments where the rest of the band would kind of fall off to the side stage and backstage, and they would either do solo songs, Ballad of Love and Hate, or together they'd sing a song, just the two of them. And I think that the idea for doing the Gleam was like a way for them to just keep, probably just another avenue for them to get this stuff out. I mean, these songs are really cool, and they felt like they wanted to document them and put them out. And it's these are really stripped away songs. It's not with the full band. It's really just the two of them. They're very delicate and just really beautiful work. On both of these EPs, I think. Yeah,
these are very delicate. That's like a way I would describe it. And I think, I don't know, these are very much good for like listening alone and just like processing kind of thing. They're really beautiful. The first one, I really like If It's the Beaches. I've mentioned 10 times if you haven't heard that yet on this podcast. But this song is so good. It's like very much the like unrealistic romantic side of me that loves this song, because it's like, if it's the beaches, sands you want, you can have them. If it's the mountains, bending rivers, you can have them. And it's kind of just about like being so in love with someone, and even though it's like hard and you can't be together, like for whatever reason, like just like escaping. It's kind of escapism. It's kind of like a fantasy of that. And like, it's just a really beautiful song though, and it's kind of heartbreaking. There's like a voicemail in it from a girl, and it's just
because they want to be together, but they can't.
They can't.
That's Pretty Girl from
There's one in this one too.
Oh,
though.
really?
Yeah,
There
I'm
is,
pretty
yeah.
sure.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
That might be bad.
But it's
There's
I've
another
never
one.
seen them play this live,
Chili.
and like I really would
Pretty
love
much
to
nice.
see that. Yeah.
I don't know if I have either. I feel like
I'm not entirely sure,
You
but
know.
I'd put money that I think that the woman on this song is his wife. I believe
Yeah.
that's Sarah,
Oh,
who he's
wow.
married to, and they've been together, for many years.
Yeah. Have like
but-
3 kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
I do
man.
believe that that's her on that song.
I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
It's such a beautiful song. It's really beautiful.
Um,
And
I
there's
learned
other
to play
beautiful
harmonica on backwards with time.
Oh my God,
nice.
Backwards with
Backwards with
Time.
Time.
That was the
is
first song I ever
so
learned how to play
good.
harmonica on. Me and
That's
my
a
band.
truly uniquely Avett track. Like
It is,
it's very on brand for like Are we going backwards with time?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a good song.
I interpret it like getting to a point in your life, when we're met with like the full weight of the world in our 20s. We're forced to
20s.
we're forced to like look back at and sort of challenge like the ideas that we've had, and I think that song is a great reflection of that kind of moment. When you're having to like look back at the way you've thought about things and maybe challenge that and realize that you've been maybe seeing it a little bit wrong. And
Yeah, totally.
as much as you grow and the days pass, you would think conventional wisdom might say that you would be getting a lot smarter, but are you really? Like, are we really learning from our mistakes?
That's exactly what
Yeah.
it's about. He's just like, like everyone like tells you like, oh, like you'll understand when you're older, and then it's like when you get to your
But now you're
20s,
older,
you
you
just
feel like you're
understand it
going
less.
crazy,
Yeah, you
and you
understand it
feel like
less.
the more you know, the less you understand. And every day you wake up and there's some new problem in the world, and you're like, what am I supposed to do? I
Right.
feel like I'm going crazy, and the world is ending. And
Am
like,
I losing my mind?
yeah, am I losing my mind? And that's like so relatable. Like, and I feel like especially now, it's like we're a week ago, like the global warming thing comes out that we have like till 2040, and it's like
Yeah.
I'm 22, like I haven't even figured myself out. Like, how am I supposed to do that? Like, oh wow, one thing at a time. Like, do I really know anything more? Like,
backwards in time.
yeah, like maybe realistically that would be cool.
Yeah.
That's a really good song. And then I think When I Drink.
Yes.
Maybe
I was about to say, probably all not alcoholics because of that song.
it's like a really like a guiding voice, because it's like, I don't know, I mean everyone drinks like whatever, but it's like when I drink, like I do say things I don't mean, I do things I don't want to do, and like there is an extent where like maybe it's not problematic for you, but like it happens, and it's like you just gotta think and like step away and realize like you don't want to like waste all your time
Right.
or whatever.
Just do your best.
Yeah, just do your best.
I think
man.
that chorus, I think, is probably one of their
That's
most
probably worth
impactful
quoting.
lyrics they've
Yeah.
ever
If
You
had.
know that chorus.
If it's the only way to keep that last bit of sanity, maybe I don't have to be good, but I can try to be at least a little better than I've been so far.
Yes.
That's so good.
Right?
And I think that's all of these are just like reminders. Like if you read that somewhere, you'd be like, oh, that's a whatever quote.
Yeah.
But when you hear it so poignantly, like
I'm
put
one of
in the
those
chorus,
Buddhist
like,
scrolls,
yeah, I don't have to be good, but I'm going to try to be a little better than I have. Like,
Try to be a little better today than I was yesterday.
yeah, like,
Yeah,
and that's like how it is sometimes. Like sometimes you're like, I can't be my best right now, so I'm just gonna like
Try and be
do
better.
one more thing off my to-do list than I did yesterday, or like try to like make amends with who I am as a person. All of these are them maturing, and it's like when I got older and re-listened to all this, I was like, oh wow. Yeah, like they knew it before it happened
Yeah.
to me. They predicted this,
Yeah,
like it
they knew.
happened. Yeah, just a really great one. And do you say it's sanguine?
Sanguine.
Sanguine. I've heard it
which
pronounced
your
multiple
production
ways.
company is named after. So I
Sanguine.
remember like
Oh,
the
that's
first
right.
time
Yeah, yeah,
somebody
yeah.
was like, "Oh, like Luke's starting this like thing, Sanguine Productions." I was like, "The Avett Brothers." Like he totally
Yeah,
named it
you
after
know.
that, and they were like, "Oh, okay." I was like, "Yeah, he totally did. I already know."
I looked up the definition, and I guess I can
It's
do
like
that.
red, right?
Well, that's true. It's one of those words that has
Color.
multiple meanings,
Yeah.
but the main meaning I think that is referenced in the tune, sanguine. It says it's an adjective. It translates to optimistic or positive, especially in an apparently bad or difficult situation.
Wow.
And I don't know
That's
if I
the Avett
could.
Brothers.
I don't
in
know-
a nutshell, really.
I don't know if I could describe America since 2016 any better. That's the main reason why I chose that word for what I'm up to.
Yeah.
I really like
Okay,
that.
right on.
Yeah. I mean,
I can dig it.
I think we can all relate to that now.
Yeah, just trying to
literally
just
since
trying to find a little
2016,
light in
that's
all
where
this.
I'm at.
Yeah.
Like,
That's where I'm at.
yeah.
That's almost the whole Gleam, so.
Yep.
Pretty much. And so then the second Gleam, which we're back on time here, even though we only like went back a year. So like right after Emotionalism, they released the second Gleam, and this was also one of the ones I still have as a burned CD in my car. Really good. I think Murder in the City is
Definitely
one of my
a
favorite
standout.
songs. Yeah, one of my favorite Avett Brothers songs. It's
Could be the best song that Scott Avett has written.
I think so.
I don't want to be insulting.
I want to
but
pull up the lyrics.
That's a hell of a song.
It is a hell of a song.
It's real sad.
It's pretty special.
Yeah.
So this one also, I think, just as a sound, it's very kind of really embraces loneliness and like the sentimental feeling, and it's just like about family and like when you leave, like what you're leaving behind, kind of, and it's just like make sure my sister knows I love her, make sure my mother knows the name, and my favorite lyric is like always remember there was nothing worth sharing like the love that let us share our name, which is like
I feel like my mom's got that like up in the house and there's like
I
fancy
wrote
letters on like a piece of wood.
my college like admission essay I like wrote, it was like something about family, and I remember like putting that line in there, and like I won some scholarship from it because they were like, that was like beautiful that you like referenced that, and I was like, I didn't even write that, like they like, I mean, I gave them credit, but it was just, it had so much to do, and I think that was like
such an incredible line.
It is such an incredible line, and the whole thing is kind of about family. Like, I wonder which brother is better, which one our parents love the most. I got in lots of trouble, they seem to let the other go, kind of thing, and like your parents telling you they're proud of you, whatever, and at the end of the day, like no matter how many mistakes you've made or like whatever's going on or however like lonely you feel, like your family's there, and that's been like a lesson I've learned, and I think this song really reinforces that, and it's just so nice, like just so reassuring.
Or sometimes you run into a song that maybe meant something to you back then and then means something entirely new.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because it was me grappling with that when I first heard it, and then now me like just looking in like in gratitude towards that, like something you have to fall back on, you know, which may not be true for everyone, which also makes me even more thankful, I guess. And Tear Down the House is kind of about like the same thing, kind of moving out on like tear down the house that I grew up in, it'll never be the same again, and it's kind of the same as like you move out of your small hometown out in the country somewhere and you go visit back, and like, you know, things have moved on without you and things have changed, but not too much, you know, kind of thing. And it's also just about your childhood, like you're never going to be the same person again.
Embracing that change, even like not even trying to rail against it or anything like that,
just like tear it down.
It.
Like it's like I'm like a new person and I'm not going to be that person again, and that's like maybe a good thing.
A lot of that album seems to deal with is it in St. Joseph where he says it's not where I am, it's who I'm with. Yeah. And that seems to be like the, you know, kind of where they're going. Like they have these families now, and it seems like they were kind of meditating on really that. Like it's not
what
where you
home?
are, it's who you're with. It's not, you know, it
so.
could be anywhere. It could be a hospital after an accident. It could be, you know, like being murdered in the city, like in the last words. You know, it's not a house. It's not the place you grew up. It's like the family you have now. That seems to be a lot of the album, really.
And I think that's a truth that's like it's hard for a lot of people to embrace because it's just such a new concept. You grow up with this one idea of how things are, and then you do realize like people are like all I have, or like it's these connections. Sure. St. Joseph's is a really wonderful song. I think that's one of my favorite Avett Brothers songs.
A hospital in North Carolina up by Lake Junaluska, kind of outside of Asheville. Yeah.
And that's, I also visited Lake Junaluska when I was in high school around this time, and he mentions that in the song. Church camp? And exactly. Exactly. But it was, you know, just really beautiful to kind of get that imagery. St. Joseph's, there's a really great live version on the Cracker Farm YouTube channel.
In the gondola.
Yeah. Which we should talk about, Cracker Farm. Great transition. Yes, Cracker Farm. So there is this YouTube channel, and also like Instagram, anyway, Cracker Farm, and it's their photographer / videographer, I guess. It's not anything high, you know, crazy, but he basically has toured with them so long that he has just chronicled all of these kind of like, you know, backstage covers and like acoustic songs, and it's always in the back of a van or in a hotel or like in their like, you know, their office at home with their kids running around in the background. Like on a bale of hay somewhere covering like Bob Dylan. And he also has branched out now to do a lot of other stuff like Jessica Lee Mayfield and like whoever they tour with, whatever, but man, Cracker Farm is like really, I think, how you really get into Avett Brothers,
Yeah.
because you listen to these records and then you see these like really delicate, soft, like live covers of them playing in a barn and a chicken and their kids are running by barefoot, and you get the Avett Brothers.
Yeah.
You like totally get it, and it's really wonderful.
And if you like them, like, it's, again, it almost just never ends. The rabbit hole just keeps going. They just make so much content that if you were to today get into the Avett Brothers, between all their albums, you know, if you could find bootlegs, all the live stuff on YouTube, but then Cracker Farm, I mean, it's
those little glimpses
just
into who they really are and what it's like on the road, what it's like
very
before
much
the show.
reflective of like what their life is and their home life as well as their touring life. And they have a documentary that came out last year.
Last year.
Like, you know, came out on HBO and all that this year, and it was last fall of 2017.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like watching Cracker Farm. I feel like I already went in knowing all this stuff about them, and then when I saw it kind of in like, you know, this like documentary well done, it was like, okay, like whatever. But it's like you could see that years before. And Cracker Farm is great. You should totally check it out. And they just have like ton of covers and really interesting stuff, even of their own songs, like acoustic versions and
wonderful videos.
Just really, really wonderful.
Yeah.
So in 2009, they're really in their like height of critical acclaim and making a fan base and all this stuff, and they put out I and Love and You, which, as Luke said earlier, is kind of the high watermark of their musical releases so far, or maybe
to me anyway. I
in
think
general, just of their career, this really is the high point of not only commercial success, but of just kind of like what they could do as a band. Maybe not in so many words, but yeah.
Well, I think that the important thing to note right off the bat is we mentioned previously with Emotionalism getting them a lot of attention. It certainly got the attention of one important figure in music over our lifetime, certainly.
Definitely, yeah.
And that being Rick Rubin, who's been behind some of the most successful, popular music that's been made
everything from Johnny
in
Cash to
America.
the Beastie Boys, which really explains why he latched on the Avett Brothers.
Yeah.
I think.
He got past. I heard that he got past the Emotionalism album and really dug that, evidently enough to do what we had just suggested as far as going on YouTube and seeing what this was all really about. And then not long after that, he got in contact with them and asked them to come out and to see if they would be interested in working with them.
And this album, I feel like, did get the attention of not only Rick Rubin, but there's a reason, you know, he like latched onto it because it is so great. This one is just full of good songs, and this one, I think, more than any of the other records, which they kind of continued on, but this one's just like a really A+ example of just like a really cohesive record. I think like all the songs really relate into one another instead of being a collection of songs. This is like thematically all threaded together, which is interesting. Which they all, like we said, are like kind of about a different part of life, but this one is definitely, they all kind of have the same sound and like whatever. And I don't know, it's kind of more of a sophisticated record sound and production wise. And this one does have, I think when you tell people, oh, like one of my favorite bands is the Avett Brothers, they automatically probably have heard songs off of this record.
Yeah.
Hopefully they're not comparing just the way later stuff. But so this one, definitely, I feel like if you're like, for me, it was like listening on Pandora or something when I was 15. Like, these are the songs that are going to pop up. These are kind of the most popular, but they're great. The songs I Am Loving You, January Wedding, Head Full of Doubt, Road Full of Promise, 10,000 Words, The Perfect Space, Laundry Room.
Ton of good stuff.
Laundry Room is like really fantastic, is really, really good, was really important
really
to
tapped
me.
into the kind of early Avett ideology of, you know,
that high energy level.
Well, yeah, definitely that. But I was thinking more lyrically, it kind of delves into those moments that seem absolutely mundane, but when they say them, when they say them in the context of the song, become these profound and kind of universal feelings.
Yeah,
and I feel like that song more, because a lot of this album is a little more abstract than some of their earlier stuff.
That's the word, yeah, for sure. Definitely,
yeah,
it's
but
just
that
more
song
abstract.
in particular is very based in reality and based on what seems to be a very personal experience.
Yeah, and it's once again one of their love songs, which I think is, they have a lot of great songs, but their love songs are really just the best, you know? And like they talk about like tiptoeing around your parents like in the laundry room or like whatever.
Keep your clothes on, I've got all that I can take.
Yeah, like it's just like wow. And like I just saw a shooting star, we can wish upon it. We won't share the wish we make, but I can't keep no secrets. I wish you would always stay. Like just very, very sweet. Like one of their lyrics that's my favorite of all time of theirs is, last night I dreamt the whole night long. I woke up with a head full of songs. I spent the whole day. I wrote them down, but it's a shame. Tonight I'll burn the lyrics because every chorus was your name. Like, oh wow. Like just incredible. Like having your heart broken and writing it all in words and then like not even being able to kind of look back at them because it hurts too much, you know. And I think everyone, the whole young love thing, you know, has been there.
One thing I really love digging into this album is there's a couple of little moments in the lyrics where they sort of reveal how they've felt about maybe being overlooked or like undervalued a little in their previous work. In 10,000 Words, they talk, the line repeats, "Ain't it like most people, I'm no different. We love to talk on things we don't know about."
Oh,
and most of the song is just about just being confused about their life, but they throw in at the end, that all the experts have had their doubts, but ain't it like most people, I'm no different.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, and that's good. It is like...
It was almost like a coming out, like they finally got to a point with Rick Rubin and with making that album that I felt like they felt a little validated in that experience, you know, and I thought
which
that
was
was
a
cool
long
thing.
time coming, I think so that is a cool thing. I never thought about it that way, so those lyrics are pretty interesting.
They mentioned something like that in Slight Figure of Speech as well.
Yeah,
They kind of touch on that.
I've heard that
song look up the lyrics
kind of ends
for
up
that
being
one.
about that in a way.
Like that whole, that being the situation of going to record with Rick Rubin and having him become a part of their life.
And it was, I mean, from my perspective, it was interesting. If I'm just getting into a little more personal relationship with Avett Brothers and kind of my journey with them, because, you know, for me, this is now, when did this album come out?
2009? Yeah, 2009.
I Am Loving You?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, I'd already been listening to for 2.5 years, and I mean, it was definitely a shock. Like, things started to change for me because of their production, and like I was saying earlier, that, you know, the songs became a little more abstract when they used to be pretty cut and dry. You know, the energy was channeled into production maybe more than it was raw screaming or you know, banging on an instrument.
Yeah, but it's still the same energy. But
it is, exactly. It's the
put
same
into
energy,
these
but
different
you're putting it in
ways of
different
art.
things. But it definitely, I think that this album changed my relationship with the Avett Brothers. Not necessarily at this point for better or worse, but just, you know, it was almost like I was listening to something that was other.
Yeah.
Which is weird, but yeah, just as someone who'd been listening to him for a while, I think that this was a marked difference. Like, Emotionalism was better produced, but this album, I feel like, puts a marked
change
different
of mood.
Yeah.
Because they're grappling
with
with new things beyond just love or like life. Kind of, they're grappling with their career or whatever. And I think that's relatable even if you're not a musician.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Kind of thing. And that is like Slight Figure of Speech. Like, I have the lyrics here, and it's like you got to lose a couple fights to win. And I think the big one they talk about, like, because they do put so much passion in their live performance, and then to be overlooked, you know, is like devastating. And they're like, I cut my chest wide open, they come and watch us bleed. Is it art like I was hoping now?
Yeah.
You know?
What's the line they said, don't go and change your hair? Or,
he
Give it
says,
to me. Yeah.
I went and cut my hair. They say, don't take your business to the big time, but I bought us
tickets there.
You know, it's also about, like, right when it begins to get fun is kind of right before you were going to quit everything.
Yeah.
And I feel like I definitely relate to that, because sometimes things, it's like, wow, no one's paying attention to what I'm doing, and I'm outputting so much creative work, and then it's like exhausting, and then like it is right before you want to give up that people, or right after you want to give up and you keep going, people are like, oh, okay. Like,
it speaks to their integrity again, because once they got all this notoriety, I felt like people started having expectation levels of them now, because there's so many listeners. And I've heard this before from other people that I've spoken with that were fans of theirs prior to this album coming out, and there definitely is a stark change. But to me, I was a listener that kind of got on to them after this album had come out, so it was just a different experience for me. To me, it seemed like this was still in the same vein of their growth and development and their changes. We spoke about the differences between Four Thieves Gone and Emotionalism. I mean, they're striving. They're trying to to just create the best art they can. This isn't like a like one of those old stories of somebody just like trying to strike while the iron's hot and get rich quick, or like capitalize on a moment because Americana's back and they're the Avett brothers. Like, I don't think that that's what happened at all. I think
it's not what happened, but it is what it felt like when it came out. When I was living it, and they were saying, like, they said, don't take your business to the big time. We bought us tickets there, and they're coming out with this produced out. I mean, I felt like he was talking to us.
But don't they?
He was talking to his fans, saying like,
I think he was too. But I think that the point is that they feel like they deserved it. They deserve to be there.
There is a marked
they
difference
deserve to
between
get there.
people
100%.
who, dress up like a farmer in the Depression and write these like fake songs, or like, I'm gonna be an Americana artist, and them kind of already being in that genre and being overlooked and falling into their place that they did deserve at this point in their career.
Right.
Like, they had worked so hard.
Yeah. And I think, I was a kid at the time, and kind of, I felt like this thing I had was changing. It's like when your favorite band sells out, or you're like, you think it's which I thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't think that is what ended up happening, but
it's
during
like you're
my time
losing
with
grasp
them,
of something that's important to you.
It did feel like that.
With a lot of artists, that's happened to me. I've been like, oh no, like, I want success for them, but this is a thing that I selfishly want to stay the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think your experience with I Love You is something that I went through with the Carpenter and the albums that we'll get to next.
Same.
Because
Magpie for me was the big one where it was like a switch that I like, because the Carpenter, I think I was optimistic and saw all
I love that album, actually.
I mean, it's pretty good. I have the box set and everything, but like, Magpie was the one where I was like, okay, like, I am feeling all that, like, they're changing, and I don't want that to happen, and I don't really know how to feel, and I think we get the our expectation in our head. We feel personally addressed by this music. This music has a impact on you as an individual, and so you start to form your idea of what they are, and then when the next record comes out and they're like, here we are now, it may not line up with who they are to you. And that's been something that I've had to deal with and come to terms with, as far as being super excited for the album to come out, it coming out, it being a curveball, it being not what I expected it to be, and coming to terms with that, trying to scratch my head and wonder, what's going on here? What are they after? And, you read about the album, they're talking about it the same way they talked about the albums before. They write songs about themselves, about the lives that they lead, and their lives are not what they were 10 years ago. Everything is different for them now, and at this point in I Love You, these guys are wifed up. They've got children. It's like that for a lot of bands we do this podcast about. We talked about Squeeze was like that, like, they get middle age and really settle into it and just start making music about it. And whether or not their fans like it, that's all they have to write about now, because it would also get boring if they wrote about the girl that broke their heart
over and over and over again.
Yeah, it would be
so it's a natural progression.
I think at the time I worried, but the worry was unfounded. There really is no need to worry, because you find out that they are just evolving. They are. All the ones people, that you think, like, so their art this is really produced, and this song I'm Loving You's got this big music video, and it's getting played in every Starbucks I've ever walked into. Department store. What's going on? Yeah, it's getting played in the Macy's. Like, what's going on? I've been to weddings this isn't now right. Where I hear that, and I'm like, no, they're supposed to be my obscure little like band out in the woods kind of thing, and then it's. But they don't sell out. It's not that, and you find out that they actually are just making music that they love, and they happen to have someone behind them who can. And I think they grapple with that, though, and this is definitely something we need to talk about going into these later albums post I Am Loving You, because in like the documentary there is a point where they like record this great song with Rick Rubin in the studio in LA, and then both of them, Scott and Seth, have to step out on the back porch, and Scott just has like his head in his hands because he's like, everybody's applauding us for like making this great piece of art, and I just want to like make the art. Like, I like feel bad that it's become this whole thing, and I think they do grapple with that. He feels like it's weird to be congratulated for what like, he's just doing anyway. For having your heart broken or for going through something terrible. Yeah, like, he's like that's so weird. I put something into words and then people are like clapping that I did this thing, and he's like, I just don't want to be around. Like, he has to have a moment to like breathe and think about that. And I think that's kind of the approach to all these records. So in 2012, The Carpenter came out, and I think this is, I don't know, their later records just, I really don't know words to say here. They're not terrible, but they're not what they used to be. They're not ones I'm going to listen to, really. Yeah. Especially the last two. But The Carpenter still has an inkling of this, like, kind of old style. To me, there's specific songs I really like, and some I really don't. Pretty Girl from Michigan, Father's First Spring,
Yeah. Pretty Girl from Michigan I really love. That's like a really good song.
It's interesting because a lot of the songs from you were mentioning earlier before we started the Carpenter and the Magpie and the Dandelion were from the same session.
Correct.
And a lot of those songs were old songs that I'd heard them play live. Like Pretty Girl from Michigan.
They did
Used to be called Telling Time.
Yeah, Telling Time. Yeah. That was
Yeah.
a song I'd heard forever ago. And there's a couple of them on there.
And I think you can kind of tell what's
I was
kind
about
of
to
the
say,
older.
you can tell what's older and
yeah.
what seems to be newer.
Like, well, Down with the Shine, isn't that one of the older ones? I've seen
That's
them
an
play
older
that
one, yeah.
live a lot.
Down
I
with
feel
the
like
Shine's
every
an older
time
one
I've
as
seen
well.
them, they play it live, and that's a pretty good song.
On Skin and Bones, but that might be on the Magpie.
It's on Magpie.
Okay.
I really think, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think Skin and Bones
That's an old
is
song.
one of the
Yeah,
great songs that
that's a
they've
good
done,
song.
and for it to have come on a later record, I'm glad that it's seen the light of day.
It's
There,
me
kinda
too,
still
me too,
there,
yeah.
there are
And
certainly
there's
other
still
songs
some
that I'm
songs
waiting
I
for.
want to go. Yeah, there's like a list. I'm like
That I
still
would like
like,
to see, yeah.
Have you
when
guys
put
seen?
that on a
There's that
record?
new Netflix movie that come out. I know I've talked to you about
Yeah.
this, Olivia, but it's called The Legend of the White-tailed Deer Hunter, something like that.
Jeez, no.
It's got Josh Brolin in it. I almost fell out when I first heard it. First of all,
song.
there's about 3 Avett Brothers songs in the soundtrack throughout the whole movie.
Oh, cool.
But
Need to
the
watch
movie
this.
begins and it's like it's basically, whatever. Watch the movie, but we're talking about the Avett Brothers. When the title like comes across the screen, there's like this scene where they're traveling in a car and music is playing. And as soon as I heard the first few like chords of the song or the first few like notes of it, I instantly thought in my mind, I know what that is. And then within a few seconds later, when they first started singing, I said, this is Late in Life. This has never been on an album. And it was clearly a studio version.
Oh, I forgot all about that song.
Dude.
Yeah, and
Holy
it's a
cow.
great song.
Late in Life.
And after he told me that was in that movie, I was like
Whoa.
watching that YouTube video over and over and like got really into
That's
that
incredible.
song. For, like,
They're
Okay,
holding
that's
they're holding
really
out
cool.
on
Yeah.
us, man.
Wow.
They're holding out on us.
That's really cool.
Late in Life needs to come out. I think whenever I was in college, I'll tell you the truth,
a good song.
I reached out to Joe Kwan, who's the cello player in the Avett Brothers.
Yeah.
I hit him up on Facebook whenever I was 21, maybe.
Yeah.
I said, hey, man, Late in Life is dope. Can you tell me what's up? Like, is it
when
ever...
are we gonna hear this?
Is
on
it
a
ever
record?
going to
So
make it on
long.
a record? And he actually wrote me back. I couldn't believe it. He responded. Could have just
Yeah.
been like, hopefully, we'll see. He could have just given me something like that. But he was like, we've recorded it the last 2 sessions. We recorded it during Emotionalism. We recorded it during I Am Loving You.
wow.
We recorded it during Magpie
What's the
and
chorus?
Carpenter. And it just didn't make the cut. We just won't.
Keeps not making it.
But
just
then
didn't make
some
it.
of
It just
these
didn't make
later
it.
records, I'm like, but you really
That should
let
have
all
made the
these
cut.
other songs make the cut?
Yeah.
Like, come on. Like, not that they're bad, but like compared, like, come on,
Right.
So we're on the Carpenter, right?
Yeah.
Life.
Yeah.
That's an incredible Avett Brothers
It
song.
is, yeah.
An album
Oh,
closer.
Incredible song, and it closes the album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Life and Father's First Spring, they really talk to where they are in life.
In
then,
li- yeah, exactly,
Because
yeah.
he's like having a kid and it's his first time as a father with like a child and this like changing season metaphorically and literally kind of in life is really, really great. I think a very relatable song.
I think something that we may have overlooked at this point is, just making sure that we give the correct props to Bob Crawford.
Yeah. That's where I was going to.
I would think I would make the argument that Bob Crawford might be the most important Avett brother, even though he's not an Avett brother. They've given him credit for saying that they would have never toured without him. They would have never gotten out of their hometown without him. And
yeah, he's definitely integral to the whole career. I feel like that is overlooked because he's there since the beginning.
totally,
Yeah.
rather tragically and unfortunately so, in between. In the post I Am Loving You times,
Yeah, right before the Carpenter.
he got some very sad news about his 22-month-old daughter. They got back from a European tour, I believe, and as soon as they touched down and he got his cell phone service back, he had realized he'd missed a call from his wife to find out that his daughter, Hallie, had a brain tumor. And I
She
think
had her first seizure then, and then they shortly after found out that, and
he had to come off the road for a time. I really think that experience felt by the whole band in total had a really big impact on the sessions we're talking about with the Carpenter and Magpie.
I think so.
I think the album. I don't know quite the story, but I think the album title itself is partly based off of that and comes from that situation. Yeah, that was really hard. I mean, I think as fans, because at that point we were all fans, I think, and you really did feel it.
You were there with them through that. And I think in the documentary, there's a
really
part
scary.
in that made me cry all the
God,
however
yeah.
many dozen times I've watched that documentary. And it's like they're a family as a band, and that's a thing that also I didn't mention, is that everyone who's ever worked with this band says that it's like they argue the least of any band. They work together. Their synergy is so great. Like,
this isn't
Rick
Oasis
Rubin,
or the Kinks.
always said like the synergy is like more important than the talent, and they have both kind of thing. And they said like when his daughter is going through all this like therapy and surgeries, that like they would like come off tour and sleep on the floor of the hospital with him, and like gives me goosebumps. It makes me emotional to think about, and it really did influence what they were all going through, and him having to step out I think also influenced a little bit of the change of sound, which hopefully they may return to.
I saw him in Greensboro, North Carolina recently after that had happened, and St. Jude's Hospital, which is I guess where his daughter was not far from the venue they were playing, and he came and played for the first time since it happened at this show in Greensboro, and they came out and sang can't remember who it's by, but it's an old song called Hard Times Come Again No More. It was, I mean,
super emotional.
It was like, well, yeah, one of the more emotional things that's ever happened to me in my life. Like, I was with a bunch of dudes, we had, Greensboro was like about an hour and a half from where I lived, and we all went up, and probably all of us were sobbing. I mean, it was incredible, and they were all just holding each other around one microphone, singing, Hard Times Come Again No More.
Yeah.
Welcoming Bob back to the stage
for the first song that came out like that.
Crazy. And that's like highly emotional.
It was it was very intense. Yeah. And I mean, part of me feels like they must have known that everyone out in the crowd was following them and knew what was going on,
and I think because people did show that support,
be cathartic in that way, and sing that song to this whole amphitheater of people, and it was
they couldn't just bring him back and it'd be business as usual.
No, they couldn't, and then they that's what I'm saying, they understood
their
that.
Songwriting, it's never been like that. It's like they were there for each other. This music is cathartic for all of us, and then for him everyone to go through that and everyone to be worried about him and care and stuff, and to have something like that really speaks to them as a band. I know,
I gotta show you guys
they played that other times too. I don't know that I've seen that specific one, but they do a really great rendition of that.
It was really truly something
else. Man, and that's just if you should definitely watch the documentary. I think First Listener Music,
May It Last.
That's like a good
that's what it's called.
May It Last. They really do a great segment on that, and it's just heartbreaking. Oh man,
We should also mention that I believe she's doing much better.
Thankfully. She's doing a lot better. She's in like
fought this
rehabilitation kind of thing. So it is much better. But I think for a good 3-4 years there, that was like a big theme, and that affected kind of everything. And that's to say there's adversity in every band, so it's really great the way they handled it. Instead of breaking up or whatever, they were like there for him.
It's inspirational.
It really is. Oh man, it really is. And this is like also when Scott is starting to have kids, and like right before Seth ends up getting married, all these things. Anyway, so next, during the same time, in 2013, they released Magpie and the Dandelion. There's some songs I still feel are very valuable on this one. Like, this album is okay, but it's definitely where Rick Rubin, you said he did remotely. It's the same sessions.
Yeah, I believe I heard that. Like, when they recorded in 9/11U, they went to the famous Shangri-La studio, which Rick Rubin operates out of. For those that don't know, it dates back to the 60s. Bob Dylan and the band famously spent a lot of time there. That's how it got its start, being a place to record music, and I think Rick Rubin came along in the turn of the century and saved it from being torn down, and he records Kanye, everybody, anybody comes there, and I think in 9/11U they came out and recorded with Rick, but then in the next session, which birthed The Carpenter and then Magpie and the Dandelion afterward, it was a remote thing, which was a bit of a change, of course, because they were having to send the recordings to Rick, have him listen to them, send the notes back. So it was just probably like a little bit more disjointed experience for him on these two records.
Yeah, I think so. And you can kind of feel that, but I still feel like there's something redeemable there.
Yeah. So Magpie and the Dandelion was the album I was at Ramsar Records working as an intern.
Nice.
For like this little bit of it. I didn't get much insight into it, but it was definitely, it definitely felt like a big release. Like this was them like having their well-oiled music business machine running.
Oh yeah.
And it was just releasing music. It was pretty incredible. But I feel like they had gotten in their stride.
Yeah.
And they were,
I think so.
they had, like you said, they'd had a lot of these songs recorded. Not all of them.
Never Been Alive is one they'd been playing for years and hadn't made the
Soul
light
Sings
of
the
day.
Wheels.
Oh, and that one's on there too.
Really
Geez, okay.
one.
So a bunch of old stuff.
So I think it's like I really like the older
lifetime.
songs off this. There's some songs I don't necessarily love, but there's still. This is one I like. This and The Carpenter I do remember like when it came out, like pre-ordering the album.
Running to Target so you could get the bonus tracks.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Early material, like as far as track wise, like how many tracks there are, it just makes me like wish, like, oh man, how great would it be to get an Avett Brothers double album now? Like they have the material, man.
Yeah.
They made two albums out of this
the way they're
session.
doing it now is like how bands put out records.
Yeah, exactly.
They're doing it professionally, but
They're
it's
doing
also
it
like
professionally.
it's not
the
that these
music
are bad
business now.
records, but for me, they just lose a little bit of what.
I would be critical of these records and say that I
There
feel
is
like
room
they've
to be
lost
critical
a
here.
little bit of the fire there. I feel like some of the passion that came through in the vocal performances of the tracks.
And I think it's just the
is a
way
little
they're
lost.
trying to do it, though. They're trying to appeal to a wider audience now, because this is also where we talked about when we sat down before we did this podcast, is like they were getting all these Americana awards and almost even helped establish the genre of Americana. For me, they were my first Americana band, and I've talked to a lot of people
in our generation
where it's like that. And now they're going for Grammys. They're literally getting Grammys in these last, 3 albums, and like it's just a different audience. They're getting radio play. They're getting on the Americana charts. They're
really getting their footing, like learning to record these things.
They are, and so it's just a different way of going about it. But it does change the band here. Lots
of money behind recording. I mean.
Yeah,
that's
a big thing.
If anyone had as much money as they wanted to record an album, it's going to sound different than what they would have done,
anything they've done before with less money. With anything. Yeah, so they put out a live record again in 2015. Yeah, 2015. Excellent as always. I love their live stuff. This one is a bit more. You can tell the crowds are bigger. You can tell they're playing bigger venues. It is a little bit of a change, but it's still, a good mix of old and new.
First DVD.
Yeah.
I remember being so stoked when that came in the mail.
Yeah.
When I finally got my hands on that DVD and could watch that.
I love live concert DVDs.
Me too.
That's like one of my. I go to McKay's all the time and get
same,
random ones.
Same.
Like I'll get
or
Fish,
Phonolux
whatever.
is a good place to go.
Yeah.
Phonolux has a bunch of good ones.
And so their final record to this point, who knows? New music coming soon? Maybe? Question mark.
Seems like it.
So by the time this podcast is out, maybe there will be a single. So in 2016, they put out True Sadness, and I'm just gonna be critical here. This is critical commentary. That's what this podcast is.
Yeah.
I don't love this record. I really don't. And I think the best way to put it is like all the things we just talked about. Same reasoning here. They're with Rick Rubin. This one they actually recorded in the studio with him. Whatever. And I remember one day I was at work and I was just very stressed out by like, I felt like the week before I had written this great thing, and then I was like, I feel just so uncreative, or like I have nothing worth of putting out in the world. And she was like, you're allowed to like, I told my friend this on the phone, and she was like, you're allowed to like not do your best some days. Like the Avett Brothers made Fourth Thieves Gone, but they also made True Sadness. She was like, that's you, like you can also like make something that's so great and then also make stuff that's like, because you're still getting to where you want to be. It's still a step. And I hope that with the whole thing, Hallie doing better, and them, like, Seth is married and has a kid now, and so that's, like, they're all kind of getting their lives to this really solid point, I think, individually, and I'm hoping in the new music, it reflects that they kind of have a more concise feeling of what they're doing.
Sure.
So you have a lot of electric guitar and electronic sounds. Almost sounds like they're rapping.
Yeah.
They try to pull back the yelling. Yeah.
Stomp and holler, like
but
Lumineers type shit.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think it's definitely trying to appeal to, whatever audience. They played, what was it, the Grammys, and they also ended up, like, Bob Crawford played something with, like, Mumford & Sons or something around this time, like, a year before.
It was like, they played the Grammys, and it was, like, the Avett Brothers backing Bob Dylan, and also Mumford & Sons backing Bob Dylan.
I almost forgot about this. I'm glad that we brought this up, because I think that it's really important to note that the Avett Brothers' performance on the Grammys was special.
Oh,
They
yeah.
were the only act to perform that night that had not been nominated for a Grammy.
Oh, wow.
They were
I didn't know
invited
that.
to perform after I and Lovin' You. And the people who put those shows together and organized those things felt strongly enough about their music that I think I've even read that whoever it is, the producer of the Grammys, the show, and had anticipated that they'd be nominated. And that even though they weren't, they still felt strongly enough that they were like, we need to have these guys on. They performed. That was a big moment for me personally, because as someone who was madly in love with the Avett Brothers and was singing their praises everywhere that I went at that time, for people that aren't into it or don't get it at first or as quickly like they would be, like I can remember it being a big deal that they were on the Grammys for my parents.
Yeah.
For when, I find like finally this band that I won't shut up about is like, in being presented in a
To
realm
where
that
everywhere,
they know about, that they can see and that they can understand.
That is a cool thing. So 2016, I think it was 2014 or around that is the peak of like Lumineers, Mumford & Sons. Like they headlined Bonnaroo in 2015,
Right.
whatever. And like, it's just where you're getting oversaturated with. It just sucks. Like the
This
Mumford
copycat
and
Avett
Sons
Brothers
suck.
shit.
It is copycat.
And then
it's
the
not
Avett Brothers
true
to copy the
Americana.
copycat Avett Brothers.
And that's what
is
happened.
It feels like,
and so that's what happened with True Sadness,
Sad.
and it is a little sad.
That's true
The
sadness.
lyrics here are good. Whatever, they
Yeah.
still have this like sweetness to them. Divorce, separation blues. Seth Avett's talking about getting
It's
a
a fun
divorce
line.
and how hard it is, and he's being like very mature and like being like, it was my fault. Like I'm sorry. Like
Yeah.
all these things.
And Fisher Road to Hollywood, or if that's the title.
Fisher Road to Hollywood.
Fisher Road to Hollywood, I feel like is a great one that kind of talks
Yeah.
about maybe what as fans we're kind of grappling with, but
Yeah.
from their perspective.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. And it's like they're all grappling with it. And when you watch the
It's nice to
documentary,
know they talk about it too,
you
though.
truly understand what they're going through with this record. And I can only hope. I think there is a trajectory of change going on in their new music. One song I do really love about this record is "I Wish I Was." And it's just this
yeah.
love song. And it's like kind of in the documentary, you see how they write it, but just the way they write together is so synergistic and like so collaborative. And that song is just sweet. Like the lyrics to that, or like the last part is like he just says, "I love you, I'm sorry."
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
song ends
Yeah.
and it's like like
And that's
oh,
and
man.
for any redeeming quality, because I'm in the same boat. Like I was saying earlier, it really felt like after Emotionalism, there was a distinct change for me as a fan, and I just grew apart from them.
Same.
And that never
Yeah.
really stopped. It
Yeah.
just kept going
Yeah.
until where I'm at now, where like I almost look back at my time with the Avett Brothers
Same.
than look at any sort of current
For
relationship
sure.
that I have with them.
For sure.
But that being said, even the Stomp and Holler crap that is Ain't No Man. Not that it's a shitty song, but it's definitely
I
that
don't
Stomp and
love it,
Holler
yeah.
crap. But if you look at the message, it's pretty
It is,
It's
and
pretty
that's,
beautiful
that's
what
the
they're
thing
saying.
about it.
It's
I
pretty
wish
incredible.
for these later albums, I really like just the lyrics.
Some of their
Yeah.
lyrics, I mean, what they're saying is important,
still
and maybe
important,
if that's
very
getting
much
to
so.
a bigger audience, it's not
True.
really a bad
if it
thing.
has to be delivered in a way that like sonically other people can digest, but they still get this message.
That's great.
I think that
I
is
hope
great.
that there's a lot of kids who got like the upbringing that I got because there was music that they could
Oh,
relate to.
man.
And maybe,
Same.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's
Same.
maybe it's this now. Maybe this
Maybe
is
it
now the new
is.
form of
And that's a
music.
good way to look at it. And it is cool. There, like, I worked at an Americana radio station, which was kind of my introduction into like the work I'm doing now. Because at the time I wasn't into it, but then playing Avett Brothers on the radio when this album came out, I was like, oh wait, cool. Like people like them now. Like, and I'm not just.
Sure.
It's not
Yeah.
just my kind of thing, even though it's their later stuff. The people I worked with at the radio station being like, oh, well, if you like this that you're playing that's on the charts, listen to this album from 10 years ago, and like, whatever. Yeah. So that's pretty much it for the chronological
Yeah.
records.
There's one more live record. Live Volume 4.
Oh, yeah, that was right before.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was right before
True Sadness.
True
True
Sadness.
Sadness, which
Yeah.
was a good one.
Yeah.
Another snapshot of like
I
where
think-
they are at a certain time in
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
life.
And
with
that's
their
like
show.
every
I think I
single
was at
band.
both of those shows.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, every single band we've done a podcast of has some kind of live anthology through their career, and
That's
I think
awesome.
that's just cool to look at. That's another thing I've kind of learned doing this whole project is like live albums can really capture the growth of a band, and it's just really interesting and really beautiful to see that. Love live albums, all of that.
Yeah. And live is, as much as we've been kind of railing a little bit on their newer albums,
You guys
Still,
are
still good live.
absolutely
Still
worth seeing
amazing
live.
And you should literally just go see the
them
Avett
live.
Brothers. Just
Go
even
see
if
them
you
live.
don't want to take the time to listen to their music, if they're playing near you, just go.
Just go see. I remember one time Seth told me after a show in Myrtle Beach, I like waited in the back to meet him with my entire family, and he was like, "Well, a family that Avett's together stays together,"
Aww,
and it's probably
it's
true. Like I
love
spent
it.
I spent New Year's Eve of 2009 to New Year's Eve of 2013 or 14.
Wow, yeah.
With my entire family at
That's
the
really
Avett Brothers.
nice.
Yeah.
I
year
love
in and
that.
year out.
Yeah,
I've never
every
gotten
year,
to go to
every
one
year.
of
We
their
didn't
New
miss
Year's
it.
Eve
We didn't miss
shows.
it.
They do that every year in North
The
Carolina.
first one I saw was at the Orange Peel in Nashville.
Oh,
Were you at the one where the,
I love that venue.
Yeah.
That venue is so good. I haven't been to Asheville in too long. That's a great venue.
Were you at the one where the disco ball
Yes,
crashed?
that was scary. I was in the very front, and there's like
It might have been the end of Seth Avett if he went out
actually
there.
Seth was. How big was that disco ball?
It
must
was
have been
huge.
15 feet wide
Crazy. I
by
didn't know
like a
about
15
this.
foot.
I
diameter
read
disco
it was
ball.
Leonard Skinner's.
Wow.
Leonard
That they-
Skinner's
that-
disco ball.
Well,
that they let 'em borrow it.
Avett Brothers.
At the
New Year's
beginning
Eve
of the show,
So they had
Is that
all
what
these. They had
happened?
all these
Okay.
disco balls up above the stage, varying sizes, mostly the typical sizes that we see. But there were some that were a lot much larger, and there happened to
Like
be one
huge.
that was particularly large. And the opener came out and played, and they had already changed the stage over, and Avett was going to come out in a matter of minutes. So he was coming up. And then I promise you, it sounded like a car wreck happened inside of this.
It did.
Inside of this
it
arena.
was like a massive
That's
explosion.
pretty scary.
It was pretty scary. Yeah.
Especially after the Route 91 thing. Anytime I hear like sounds like that at a concert,
No, I
kinda freak
immediately
out.
thought like I was like I'm gonna die. I thought it was like
It
a
crashed into the
bomb.
stage, and it didn't crumble into pieces. It broke the stage and
through.
stayed intact. So they played the whole set with the front left part of the stage just dented in with this giant disco ball.
Joe Kwan would just put one foot on top of it and play the cello.
Crazy.
It was awesome.
That's like a lot of people would just be like, "Bye guys, Happy New Year. We're gonna go off stage."
Right.
Yeah.
That's
They were
pretty
counting their lucky
badass.
stars that they weren't out there when it
yeah,
happened.
they're like, yeah,
Holy
that's
shit.
crazy.
It was wild.
Oh,
Yeah, it was
man.
pretty scary. I was
That's
standing
crazy.
right in front of the disco ball. Like I was probably 20 feet from it, and it was just.
Yeah.
It's not like a car wreck.
It was so
Oh
smashed.
wow, that's crazy. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's really it. I haven't seen them in a couple years.
Yeah, I saw them in 2016.
I think that was the
right
last
after my
time I saw
graduation.
them.
They played at the Bridgestone Arena, and it was good.
Nice. Yeah.
Good show.
Yeah.
I was way up in the nosebleeds.
Here in town? Yeah, I was
Yeah.
at that one.
Yeah.
One show that I'd like to point out that was cool for me is my younger brother Ben and I, we went to watch them play in 2011. I think my first show ever was in 2011, I think I saw them 3 times in about 4 weeks.
Yeah.
I went and
Wow,
saw
that's
them.
incredible.
Oh yeah, because it was like my first time seeing them, so I was like full on into like my love for them. I saw them for the first time in Athens, Georgia, at a benefit for the Georgia Theater, which had burned down at that point.
Yeah, I remember that.
And a week or two later, my brother and I went to the game at Turner Field in Atlanta, at the Atlanta Braves game, and the Avett Brothers had been asked to play a post-game
this
concert.
happened a
That,
few
yeah.
weeks ago as well.
They did it
did,
again,
yeah.
but
They did
this
it
was
again.
back before. This was pre, people in department stores knowing about them. So I think it was like a bit of a hard time to get them booked on this, but. My brother and I, we got passes. We were down on the field, like around
That's
shortstop, right by the stage, and then we got to meet him afterward.
Yeah.
And my
that's
little
so
brother,
cool.
he bless his heart, he was speechless upon meeting them.
I love that.
And it was really special, man. They were really gracious. Like, even though they had just played this whole set, like there was, I don't know, 50 people in line
Yeah.
to like shake their hand and take a picture, and they were as happy to see us as they were the other 49 or
man, I
48
love
people
that.
there was
Yeah.
there. And that was probably one of the coolest times I've been able to see them. Is that I'll never forget is seeing them
That's
at
a really
Turner
unique
Field at the Braves game.
experience,
It was
yeah.
pretty awesome.
That's
yeah.
really wonderful.
That's
yeah.
great.
Well, the Avett Brothers are really wonderful. You should listen to their discography. really dig into those lyrics and check out their documentary, May It Last, live DVD, live records, all of that. Thank you, Luke and Colin, for being on the show today.
You're welcome.
Thanks a lot.
And thank
Go see
you.
them live. Go see the Avett Brothers live.
Yeah, please
Immediately.
go see them live.
That's yeah. If
Go
I can
do
say
it.
anything,
just do it. It's gonna be electric and change your whole view on
They
the
will win you
band.
over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I can't sit here and tell you how good it is. You just have to go.
if
be
you can
there.
somehow see them in like a 300 person room, definitely
if
do
that's possible,
that.
just get as close as you can and just go in and have fun.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for listening to Bandsplainer.